You're listening to the Game of Inches podcast, powered by Mayflower Sports. Now, here are your hosts, Jacob Smith and Andrew McGinnis.
Welcome back. It is episode number 35 of the Game of Inches podcast. We have an intro finally. We got some music going to fire the boys up before the podcast gets going. I'm Andrew McGinnis with Jacob Smith. We are live on YouTube, Facebook, and Periscope. You can find our podcast across all podcasting networks, Apple, Google, Amazon Podcasts, anywhere you can find podcasts. Check us out. Also on YouTube, posting a lot more stuff on there. Exciting podcast today. We're going to run through lots of different things in the world of sports. Then we have the executive director of Atlantic University Sport, Phil Currie, joining us after a year off. Atlantic University Sports are back in action. Looking forward to the interview. Looking forward to chatting with Phil. But before we get going with the podcast, what's going on, Jake? We're back, man.
This is it, buddy. Friggin' jacked up by that intro there. Obviously, we were talking off screen about how excited we were about that. At least I was. I'm fucking stoked. I told you right away. Big fan of that. No, but excited to be back, man. AUS sports are back. Last night, St. Mary's, my university where I graduated from, beat Dalhousie 3-2 in soccer. Heard it was an excellent game. I saw the boys scored I think it was 3 goals in the span of 8 or 9 minutes. So obviously good to have. And I heard it was jam-packed with students, people there excited to have sports back. So that's excellent for the AUS. So obviously really excited to have Phil Currie on, but just excited to be back and talking, man. Feels like we haven't done this in a while. I know it's only been a week or a week and a half, but just excited to get back into it, man.
Yeah, that's actually sick to hear. When Will posted that, was telling us about that, it's exciting to hear. And it sounds like it's almost like it feels weird that that's so exciting, I miss being in a stadium packed spot. When I went to Montreal, even just being outside the Bell Center with so many people, it was just we were talking yesterday just on a phone call, me and you, about how this has been going on for over 2 years now, where we haven't had huge social gatherings or been to huge events and stuff like that. So, I'm up here in Amherst, and it was just cool to hear how big the atmosphere was and how exciting it was at Husky Stadium. So that's sweet. We're excited. We're going to hopefully be going to get some footage at AUS events and some different sporting events soon and stuff like that. But we got to announce Sports Interaction. Let's jump into that. First and foremost, we've been working on something with Sports Interaction. Obviously, Jake and I are both sports bettors. Make sure you guys check out Jake's new video. He's doing it every single Friday. He just recorded. I tuned in for a little bit and giving out some winners, Jake. So hopefully it's a big week. Cash some tickets. But sportsinteraction.com/Mayflower Sports, 125% deposit bonus, up to $100. So use that. Gamble responsibly. Gamble with your head, not your heart. And, great Canadian sports book. So we're happy to have our own link and looking forward to using some of their odds and making some money.
Yeah, Sports Interaction is actually one of the first books that I ever got started with. They're actually really friendly. The one thing I like about Sports Interaction, especially if you're somebody that gets overwhelmed by the markets like that, meaning so many different options to bet on. The one thing I like about Sports Interactions is they have the main ones, but not the ones that are gonna suck you in. Where it's the coin flip or stuff like that. It's stuff that actually has to do with the game. And like you said, they're a Canadian book. Depositing your money on there is super easy. Withdrawing your money, super easy off of there. And I find a lot of the odds are actually pretty good on there. You might find stuff with a little bit more value on Sports Interaction than you might find on say a Bet365 or Betway or CoolBet. So really excited to be partnered with them. Make sure you use the link. Make sure you get that welcome bonus. Why wouldn't you bet with somebody else's money? You'd be foolish not to. They're just giving it to you for signing up. I don't understand why you wouldn't take it. It's right there. So make sure you sign up and make sure you get that welcome bonus.
Yeah, definitely. And huge shout out to Chris. I was dealing with that Sports Interaction. Super, super nice person helping us out. Get set up with our own link. So if you guys hear us talking about any betting odds or anything like that on this show, we will be referencing Sports Interaction. We got to touch on the golf tournament. You and I have been talking about this golf tournament. We've kind of been teasing it for a little while, past couple of months really, but it's September 17th, man. This is episode 35 of our podcast. Time has just flown by. and golf tournaments on October 1st. You've been holding it down, taking care of things. I've been trying to, keep up with it, but hats off to you for doing a lot of work with this. I'm excited for it. We got a camera now. Apparently we got somebody else coming in to help us out with some photography and videography. So let the people know what they can expect from the tournament.
Yeah, since you mentioned the other videographer, just shout out Noah Jones. Really appreciate you coming out to help us. For those who don't know, Noah Jones and a good friend of ours, Quentin Parsons, have their own podcast, Rap and OJ. Make sure you check it out. All things hip hop, rap. Really good guys. Quentin's actually playing in the tournament. Noah's helping us out, so that's really cool of them. But yeah, just to jump into the golf tournament, basically it's a 4-person scramble. 25 teams. There's going to be prizes, sampling tents. We're playing at Avon Valley. It's a shotgun tee time, so there'll be a lot of energy there, meaning everybody starts on a different hole, and like the groups that don't get to start on the 18 holes just start behind somebody else. So there's going to be a lot of energy there. It's going to be a fun day. For those who haven't played Avon Valley, it's in Falmouth, Nova Scotia, just on the other side of Windsor. So it's about like 30 minutes away, 40 minutes away. Very playable course, very open course. I say it's like the perfect course for like learning how to get good at golf. Like there's like courses where like you can go play good because they're easy, but this is a course that's challenging and makes you have to kind of think about your shots, plan them. And when you're playing with 4 guys, you're definitely going to want to try to strategically, lay up to certain spots, or, like the greens are fast as anything there. So if you want to stick the green with an approach shot, you got to land that stuff like pretty short, depending on if it's raining or not and what kind of the conditions the greens are in. But it's going to be a fun tournament, man. The idea for the tournament was I wanted to do something fun. I want to do something like not like uber competitive, but like, competitive enough. And I think with the group of golfers there, we have a nice range of like really good golfers, and some guys that are still learning. So for most of the teams that I've been talking to, they're just excited to get out there. It's a good way to end the season. Everybody knows in Nova Scotia, we don't know if it's going to snow October 2nd or if it's not going to snow till February. So nobody really knows here when the golf season is going to end. And this is just a good way to kind of end the season for those golfers. And I'm excited to kind of get some footage and start doing a little bit more golf content again. Obviously, Luke, Life Below Par, got an awesome opportunity to go to Ireland to become a doctor. So that's where they have been. Luke's off getting his MD, so shouts out to him. And yeah, man, I'm just looking to have a good time. That's basically the gist of the tournament. It's going to be a fun way to end off our summer here in Nova Scotia.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a blast. And one thing that I was super excited about was, growing a brand doesn't happen overnight. It's something that can, take a long time. And I was excited to see, obviously, our buddies coming out, Jake, but seeing some names come in that I didn't recognize, seeing definitely. Some emails come in. That was super cool. Look forward to getting to know some people, getting some great pictures, just capturing some memories about it, and, making an annual thing. Maybe it'll be at Avon, maybe it'll be somewhere else, but having the Mayflower open every single year sounds pretty cool. So
definitely.
I just, before we even have the tournament, I'm just like thankful for everybody that's taking part and getting messages from people saying they're looking forward to the tournament. People that are helping us out with sponsorships when we were such a small company so far has been super nice.
I was going to say, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to all the sponsors that are helping us out. You guys know who you are. We're gonna have an official post for them to let the people know like who they are, where they're located, what they kind of do, how they're helping us out through the tournament. All the sponsors that we've been dealing with, the sampling people for the beverage tents, like have been awesome. The course has been awesome with us. So we're really excited just to get you guys some content. We're going to have some pictures, some videos. We're going to have a little montage put together of the tournament for you guys. And like I said, I'm just excited to have a good time and just wanted to say thank you to all the people that are helping us out, because me and Andrew couldn't have just done this alone.
Definitely. We'll keep everybody updated on the tournament as it gets closer, but it is the 17th right now. Tournament is on October 1st. We do want to make it clear to everybody out there that listens to us that we are on YouTube, also just on all podcasting networks. We're going to be going live every single Friday. So Friday will be our consistent date. You can find our podcast on Spreaker later on Fridays, but YouTube live every single Friday around this time. I'm going to try and get a guest or two on Fridays as well, either locally in the Maritimes or somebody from around Canada or America. That's our consistent day we're going to try and give you. Let's jump into the Blue Jays, man. We got a little short period of time before Phil Currie joins us. But look, I just wanted to mention, my uncle reached out to me. A lot of people that obviously know I bet on sports reached out to me, Jake, and he's like, hey man, like what are the odds right now for the Jays to make the playoffs? This is like 3 weeks ago. And I didn't get back to him. Felt bad about it. Messages me again like 3 days later. He's like, hey, you gonna answer me? Like, what are these odds? And I hit him with them, and he's like, dude, that's insane. Like, it wasn't like anything crazy, like 10 to 1, but it was like, I think it was like 3-4 to 1. This is like a little while ago, and all of a sudden they started dominating the Yankees. They're beating the Rays, and like that's just what's so cool about baseball. People complain about how it's like 162 games, but nobody can tell me that like this time of year doesn't get exciting. And the fact of the matter is, I know there's so many games, but something I heard somebody say like a couple of days ago is like the games in the first 10 days of the season are just as important as the last 10 games. It's just a matter of like how you perform or when you do well. And it all adds to the standings the same. But right now the standings are unbelievable, and the Jays are making it tight. I mean, between the Jays and the Yankees, Red Sox, it's been really, really tight, and they've handled a lot of games. I mean, against the White Sox, even the Mariners, Angels, they've played really well.
Yeah, man, I'm just excited to see that we're in the race. Obviously, being down in Florida was tough. I'd say a tough get up for the Jays. It definitely didn't do them any favors being down there, but since returning home, they've been one of the best teams in baseball. I still find them to be, kind of a little bit streaky here and there. Some games you expect them to win, they don't win. Other games, like you said, they go to the Yankees and they sweep them, and like they haven't done that since like 2004. So like nobody would have guessed that. So personally, for me, I'm just excited to see that we're in the race. I love watching the young bats. I think that we have an awesome future to build on. So for me, I think again, just snagging a wild card spot, if we can just get to the dance, we have a chance. And I feel like that's something that the Jays are kind of, I would say leaning on like they did last year. If we just get there, we'll have a chance. And I feel like with another year under their belt and going through this grind, like people underestimate that when you're fighting every single game to make the playoffs, like going into the playoffs, you don't really have those playoff jitters like to start because you've been in playoff mode for the last month,
I agree.
month and a half, right? So the Jays have been in playoff mode, I think, since coming home. Like they knew, like we need to, like games at home, we need to win. Like that's not debatable. If we want to make the playoffs when we come home, we need to start good and we need to start hot, and they did. And that's why we're back in the race. And to me, it's just going to come down to the consistency. Is if the young guys can hold up under the pressure for the rest of the season, knowing that the race is getting tight, knowing that the Yankees are there, knowing that the Red Sox are there. And just seeing if we can prevail. I'm excited to see how it goes. And I'm not going to hold it against them if they don't make the playoffs. I think coming home and making that run was an excellent, excellent showing. And there's still season left for them to make the playoffs. But I just want them to just keep pushing and just keep showing what they've been showing. I think they've been entertaining to watch.
Yeah, I think, two things you mentioned I couldn't agree more with. And number one was just being back at home. Like even the Raptors, like they're super pumped to get home as well. But like the emotion that we saw on the face of those players, and a lot of them not even from Canada, like just literally happy to be playing at their home field. It says a lot about what it was like for them. They didn't have a home, playing in either Buffalo or playing in Florida, having the fans back. Fans are outstanding. I mean, that's what's one cool thing about having just one Canadian team is that it's Canada's team, and we got people traveling to Toronto. It's obviously a huge tourist destination. And you get there and you want to go to a Jays game and you want to cheer on your team. But also, like you said, when you're in playoff mode way before the playoffs, it helps you when you get there to be ready and kind of to have no pressure. All about the pitching. That offense is unbelievable, man. The offense is insane. It's not far-fetched for them to score 6, 7, 8 runs in a game. It's just all about the pitching, and hopefully they can get it done. Robbie Ray has been absolutely bonkers. 13 Ks last game against the Rays. He had back-to-back games with 10, then he had 8 against the A's. I mean, he's been carrying. We need Ryu to get back into consistent form, but he's been pretty good on a long-term scale. It's been pretty cool to see. I do want to get to the Evander Kane gambling story, Jake.
Yep.
To jump into that, I want to touch on it because I think you and I might have talked about it like way back when everything first started to come out about him. But I wrote down some of these numbers that I saw from him, and I thought it was like pretty insane to see. So he was sued by a casino for $500,000 for not paying a tab. So pretty much for people that don't know, if you have enough money and you give them kind of like some banking information and they know how much you're stacking, they'll literally just give you like credit at the casino pretty much, which is obviously something the casino really wants to do. So he disputed that, and I think they met somewhere in the middle or something of that nature. Then he files for bankruptcy, saying he's lost 1.5 million into casinos playing casino table games and to bookies. Openly admits he had a gambling problem and was also then accused of gambling on his own games and gambling in the NHL. One thing I found funny, and this is before I even watched the interview, and it was only like a 9-minute clip. Why would somebody bet and tank on their own games if they had one of their best years they've had in the NHL in several years, had the least amount of penalty minutes they've had in the NHL in several years, and their team actually played pretty well for the first time in a couple different years? It just doesn't really seem like it fit.
Yeah, this is like a weird layered situation where like the wife made her statements, all of a sudden she retracts them and says, nah, that's not true. I made that up. Now he's doing this kind of like sit down interview. Like, I really have no idea what the hell is going on with this guy. Like, what's true, what's not. If he's lying, she's lying. If, there was some sort of like fight and she decided to like out him, and then like they made up, and then they were like, all right, we got to reel all this back in the bag. Like, kind of like, I have no idea. Like, to me, I have a hard time believing that he was betting on his own games, and like the sense that like if he was betting on his own games, I don't think he was purposely like trying to throw them. I think it was more so maybe like, like we're not going to beat Pittsburgh. Like I'm throwing, this guy's out and this guy's out, and we're on like a 3-game losing streak. Like I'm just going to throw like 10,000 on.
Like Jake, if he played for the Sabres, I'd be like, okay, maybe someone's throwing a game for the Sabres. Yeah. But like his team wasn't even that bad.
No, they weren't terrible, right? So like that's the thing is like I think that's maybe where he thought he could get away with it, is like they weren't on like the worst team. So like maybe he thought he could bet a little bit here and there on his own team to win or lose and kind of get away with it, because there'd be no indicator of like, well, like performance, like they were terrible and like Evander had like, 150 penalty minutes and like 8 points and like didn't show up to practice. Like there'd be indicators that like if he was trying to throw the games, that he would be throwing the games. And I just don't think that happened. I have no idea what is going on. It's just, it's a complicated, layered situation that really only him, I would say his wife and probably his lawyer have any real idea of what's going on there.
Yeah. And one thing that really stuck out to me for the interview was they talked about his teammates, and I expected to hear out of her mouth that all of his teammates had his back, that his teammates wouldn't say anything bad about him. But it was like the opposite. And Evander Kane didn't really seem too rattled by it. It sounded like he was like, I don't believe the media. But there were like 2 or 3 different times in the interview where she said like, yeah, there was actually a report from one of your teammates that didn't want to come out publicly that said he doesn't want you to come back to the team. And then he was like, I'm not sure if I can believe that. And then there was like another example where he said that it was the night before a playoff game and he went out gambling to a casino. And he's like, his teammates would all know about it and like don't back his decisions. Like, do you remember that picture when he first came in the league with him and like stacks of money on his ear? Like, I'm sure the older teammates were probably like, I don't really like this kid, but it's hard to believe that, like, you know what I mean? Like, I just think like it sounds like hockey team issues are always solved within the team. So it's kind of hard to believe to hear that his teammates didn't have his back. And it kind of like was kind of reassuring to see that Evander didn't even believe that. He's like, I don't believe you. They said that.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if there was honestly like a lot of guys that like internally like maybe haven't had the conversation with anybody, but to themselves have been like, this guy was probably betting on our games and I don't want him back. Like, I don't think that's out of the realm of impossibility that he did, in fact, bet on his games, and there's guys on the team that don't want him back. Like, I think that's just like kind of like goes hand in hand. And once you hear that, I feel like unless he's going to like actually show you that he wasn't betting on games of your own, then you're going to come to your own conclusion and you're going to decide whether you want him a part of your team or not, regardless of what type of player you are, what type of role you are. You will justify to yourself whether you're like, I can look past that or you can't. And I think there probably would be a couple guys on the team that wouldn't want to come out publicly and say that they're against him, because if he does come back to the team, that just creates problems.
Yeah.
But behind closed doors, maybe off the record, I could see a guy or two being like, hey, like if you're asking me personally, like I would rather him not come back.
Yeah. And it is a distraction. There's no denying that it's a distraction. We're going to have Phil Currie joining us here from the AUS momentarily, live on the podcast. You can check out the archive version on YouTube as well, and in our podcast at Apple, Google, Amazon, all over the place, wherever you find your podcast, iHeartRadio as well. Real quick, Wanderers moved to full capacity with proof of both vaccinations. Huge news. Both you and I have had a lot of fun at the Wanderers grounds. I've been to 2 games, I think, so far in the season. So super excited to see that news, and just wanted to mention that on the podcast. Excited to get back to full capacity.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to have everybody back. I know personally that I haven't been around that many people in a very long time, but I'm not scared. I'm actually like kind of excited, like to be like, oh, like this is what energy feels like. You know, it's kind of hard to like grasp like energy when it's like the stadium's like half full, because like we still could be making the most noise possible, but it's not the most noise that could be made in that stadium per se. And everybody knows the Wanderers ground is a huge advantage to the Wanderers. Oxner came on the podcast, even said like guys have came to the team and been like, I came here because like the atmosphere around the club is awesome. The grounds is awesome. It's very like intimate. Everybody feels like they're on top of you. Like everybody's really there with you. And it's going to be awesome to have the kitchen full, cheering, singing, the main stand full, and just really get back to that Wanderers atmosphere that we all know from the first season.
Yeah, it's going to be super exciting. And just to be able to have a full packed capacity at the Wanderers grounds will be awesome to have. We're looking forward to getting back to the grounds again. And it sounds like we have another sport, another league. The Atlantic University Sport action is back. We're excited to have Phil Currie, Executive Director of the AUS, joining us. Phil, thanks so much for your time.
Pleasure to be here with you, gentlemen. How you doing?
We're doing great.
Thanks for coming on.
Thanks a lot for coming on.
My pleasure.
So the AUS is back, the return to sport. We had 1 year, kind of a little hiatus, obviously, with the global pandemic. Jake went to St. Mary's. I used to work at Dalhousie as a play-by-play and in-house announcer. Loved watching university games growing up. What can you tell us it's been like for you over the past year?
Well, it's been tough, obviously. We're in the business of making sport happen, and when you can't do that, it's troublesome for sure, and really hard on our student athletes, as as former student athletes and around the environment is they train hard, they train to compete, and when they can't compete, it's not only hard on them physically, they train a little bit harder probably, and the mental side of it is just the mental health piece. Oh my God, you're not doing something you love. I think that has a lot of effect.
Yeah. So with the obviously sports back this week, just how excited are you?
Well, we're pretty excited. There's a lot of buzz around the office here. Obviously, we have already had competition on the go, and as you guys know, football kicks off tonight, and we have other games going as well. And we're excited, just for our student athletes, just to see them compete. And in fact, I was fortunate enough to be able to go to St. FX in the middle of the pandemic to celebrate the coach there,
right,
Coach K, and for the first time in quite a number of months, I actually got to see student athletes compete. And when you're in that environment, when you've been away from it for so long, it's heartwarming, and it's heartwarming to see those student athletes out and competing. And it was then, and it's it is now. And we're just excited to be back, and that we have everybody doing what they're supposed to be doing around sport.
I got to ask you a follow up on that event and what that event was like, because Phil, I told you I used to do the announcing at the Dow games. And obviously when you're doing the introductions, you announce how many years a coach has been coaching for. So I'm 24 years old. And so I would see that I'd have to announce that Coach K has been coaching for almost double the amount of time I've been on this earth. And I thought this guy was never going to retire. I mean, he's a great coach, great with the athletes. First of all, what's your relationship like with him, and what was that event like?
We've Coach K and I over the years have had a great relationship, and when we're hosting both our conference championships, we get to spend more time with them, obviously, and the national championships, up to a number of years ago. What can I say about Coach K? I mean, the dedication, what he's done for student athletes, not only on the court, but the stories you hear, what he does for them off the court. They're truly his kids when they're in his program. And that's how he sees it. He's like a father figure to them all. And I think Coach K would still be coaching. There's a time in your life when everything catches up to you and it's time to move on. And I think Coach K will enjoy his time off, but he'll never be away from basketball, I don't think.
Yeah. So I was just wondering, Phil. Obviously, I kind of have a little bit of a clue of what your role is, but as executive director of Atlantic University Sports, what is your role? Like, what do you actually do there, and what does your department try to help facilitate for the student athletes to be able to go out there and play the sports that they love as student athletes?
That's a great question. And we want to be student athlete focused in everything we do. So every decision we make and every time we communicate with athletic directors in reference to what we need to talk about conference wide, and really managing sport, university sport. Student athletes are always paramount and at the front of our conversation. So that's important. But what we do is we market university sport. We bring partners to the table to allow us to grow and support our members more every year. And the more partners we can bring on, the more financial resources we have to do that, and and building capacity, I guess, in terms of delivering sport in Atlantic Canada. We do a lot of work with the national body and with our colleague conferences across Canada in reference to anything from policy to field of play pieces. So we have communications people here. We have people that look after member services, partner services, that type of thing, and our director of sport, here looks after kind of making sport happen, stats, and all those pieces. So they're the big pieces, and really just kind of keeping it all together, and no different than what you would see out of some of the big conferences in the U.S. We have 4 conferences here in Canada. We're one of them, and proud to be one.
Before we get into this year, which I'm super excited to get some information from you, I want to ask about last year, because over the past few weeks, I've learned that there was a lot more going on than I might have known. And I knew there was, team workouts or at home workouts and things of that nature. But what was going on with these teams? Because to my knowledge, if there was still some on-campus activity, there were some, home workouts given by the team coaches for the players to do. So it sounds like there was still some team stuff going on. The players just couldn't compete. Was that right?
No, that's correct, and really it had everything to do with the epidemiology at the time. What our the 4 respective provinces were allowing in their own in each individual province. Sorry, and we did have some policy that allowed exhibition competition if it was possible based on the epidemiology to move forward. So some student athletes in the conference had the opportunity to play and compete. And usually that window closed quickly when cases went up or whatever the case may be. But that did happen, and kudos to the coaches. That hard on the coaches too in terms of ensuring that they had 1, student athletes on campus, and 2, had activities that focused on their development. And I think that what that will prove to be is a real benefit coming into this season, certainly for the student athletes that were able to take part in those activities. I think our competition's going to be great, and really looking forward to getting out there and watching some of that competition.
Yeah, and Phil, I was just kind of wondering too, to kind of piggyback off of that, going into more so this season, what kind of protocols and stuff are going to be in place to make sure like we can keep the student athletes safe? Obviously, we know some of the COVID cases have been going up a little bit, but we're all super excited to have the university sport back, and just kind of wondering how we're going to make sure that these student athletes are safe and we get to keep going to these events and seeing this awesome product that we have here in Atlantic Canada.
The student safety is paramount, not only to Atlantic University Sport, but all of its members, and obviously, the senior administration at each of those institutions as well. And as you know, we've all come out with vaccine policies, double vaccinations, and provide some runway for student athletes to get double vaccinated. But that's really the policies that we have, and it's going to be driven. And I've talked with certainly in Nova Scotia here, our chief medical officer quite frequently, and we always finish our conversation with, or he finishes it for me with, Phil, remember, it's all based on the epidemiology at the time. So, we will continue to take the lead from the respective provinces. We do have a full return to play program that we're operating under, and that's coupled with the double vaccination policy that we have. Yeah.
So we've talked about the players and kind of what's expected of them and the double vaccination. How about the fan experience? Because Jacob and I were talking about earlier on the podcast before you came on, we had some friends that were at Husky Stadium last night for the soccer game. Heard it was a great atmosphere, really fun game to be around. I wish I was there for the game. What's the fan experience going to be like? Because I've seen some great fans for AUS events, and I hope we can see that again.
Well, in terms of the fan experience, ourselves with the championships, and I know that our members are going to do everything they can to make the fan experience, what it was prior to COVID. Obviously there's going to be some restrictions. There's gathering restrictions and how people are, I guess, situated in any of the venues. But I think that the fan experience itself will be second to none. And coupled with great competition on the respective playing surface. So, I don't think it's gonna look different, but I don't think it'll feel any different in terms of the fan experience.
Yeah, definitely. You just mentioned the look. Do you think there'll be any product difference between 2 years ago and this year with the middle of the year laid off? I know most of the athletes, like you said, well, not most of them, some of them have the chance to do at-home workouts and stuff like that. But do you expect the quality of the AUS to keep going in a direction that it was going before COVID, which was upwards, in my opinion? I think the AUS over the last couple of years has got some awesome athletes across various sports. And I'm just kind of curious to think what you think is going to happen with the product coming back to play.
Well, Jake, I think we've got a little bit of an edge up over, like, if we compare ourselves to the rest of the country, because most of the country weren't able to compete at all. Right. So we did get some competition, and I think that'll help us. And again, I think that, in terms of systems, we might, some programs might have to, work with their systems a little harder than because they weren't able to do a lot of systems work in the downtime. But these student athletes, as you know, they're solid, and we have, quite a few returning student athletes, obviously, and with the seniors versus the recruits, I think it'll all balance out. And I think I'm not worried about the quality. I think we're going to be solid, and our coaches are focused on that, and so are our athletic departments.
Yeah, you speak about the edge that we've had, and I want to mention the AUS comparison to OUA and RSEQ and some of the Western divisions, because I just love the fact that being in the Maritimes here, I just feel like when we go to these big tournaments and we're going up against these big schools, Ryerson and those types of, U of T, it's like, yeah, this is the small school, St. Mary's or Acadia. And I feel like they're always the underdog role. I just think it's been such a pleasure to watch these teams kind of flourish and be that underdog and do so well. Like Jacob said, go in such a great direction. What have you seen? 'Cause I'm sure you're seeing the exact same thing as me, that some of these teams have gone to the national level and competed, not just doing well in our own Atlantic province and conference, but doing well at a national level against some of these huge schools.
Absolutely. I always like to say that in Atlantic Canada, regardless if it's a university sport or whatever we're doing out there in the world, that we always punch above our weight class. And I think that's the case with all of our programs, a majority of them, like we do punch above our weight class and never go in with the attitude of an underdog, but that we're there to compete and compete at the same level as anybody else. So, I think that when we get to national championships again, and hope that happens, and we don't have any major issues that prevent us from getting there. But I think you'll find that the Atlantic Canadian teams and right across the board will do well.
I know as an executive director, you probably can't say, what your favorite sport is to watch, but just out of curiosity, what are you excited? Like, what sport are you excited to come back? Because I know at different schools, different sports do well, obviously, different programs. Just what in general, maybe a sport that you're excited to come back and see and just be a part of, be at the games and just get into that atmosphere again?
Let's put it this way. When I came to Atlantic University sport, I was a football guy, right? I mean, I came from the football world, played football, coached football, those things. But I've become a fan just of university sport, to be honest with you. I mean, the swim championships, the track and field championships are outstanding. Obviously, I still enjoy football, going to the game tonight and going to participate in that and what have you. But women's volleyball, my God, just a great game to participate in and be a fan of. I mean, there's no real for me. It's about student athletes and getting all the student athletes out there and competing. And I can go to a swim championship and have a great time and enjoy it just as much as I can for a football game where I come from. So right across the board, they're all great. And I would encourage anybody that's listening or watching today that get out there and experience that for yourself. It's fantastic.
Well, we're looking forward to experiencing it. We're going to be covering the AUS on this podcast, Phil. We're kind of a new media company over the past 6 months. We started during the pandemic, so we couldn't do any interviews, really, any filming or anything like that. But we're going to be covering a lot of local sports here in the Maritime, so looking forward to that as well. We just appreciate your time, and thanks a lot for coming on.
Well, listen, gents, I really appreciate it. We appreciate the time and your interest and what you're trying to do here. Congratulations, by the way, and getting the podcast off the ground. And here's to great growth and success.
Thanks a lot, Phil.
Thanks, Phil. Thanks for coming on.
Take care. My pleasure. Bye-bye.
Phil Currie, Executive Director of the AUS. That was awesome, man.
How can you not like that guy?
That was great.
That's obviously my first. I don't know if you've ever talked to him before. That was my first time ever meeting him, putting a face to a name. What a guy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just really happy to have, AUS back just in general, but to really be able to just watch these games and have a good time and, go to the games and just see everybody having a fun time. And he talked about the fan experience, but also the player experience. And, so just to feel the way that he was so passionate about the students. I like how they always say students, right? Like I say players. I think that's probably because I was an announcer, but he always uses the word students because to him they're trained for it to be students first. Obviously,
right out of my mouth. I was gonna say the most impressive thing throughout that whole interview was never once did he waver from student athlete. I was gonna ask him before we got out of there, but I knew we were pushing it really close for time for what we said we were gonna talk to him for. He obviously is a busy man and has stuff to do, but I just wanted to ask him just about that because he mentioned the student athlete every time he mentioned the athlete. It was student athlete, and I wanted just to kind of gauge what kind of importance he has on that, because for some people like you and me, it's very easy to be like, oh, the athlete, but they do go to school, they do have to perform academically as well in the classroom, and there are standards, and they do have personal goals as well that they are trying to achieve as student athletes. So I think it was just cool that that's something that he referenced every time, to know that, you could go somewhere with this sport, but if not, you have an awesome education system to lean back on with the Atlantic universities. And I just think that's awesome. I thought that was really, really, really good chat.
Yeah, it's just so funny because the whole time I'm thinking about it as a 24-year-old. This will be my first year not doing the announcing anymore. I'm thinking about having a nice cold beer at a football game and watching SMU or watching whoever play and going to a basketball game. But from the business standpoint, from an executive director standpoint, it's he's going to have fun watching these games, but it's business. These guys are athletes. we care about their academics, their mental health, their well-being. You know, that's what just goes to show the character, and that someone like that should be running the AUS.
Yeah, definitely. And he mentioned, like you said, the mental health aspect. That was actually, I think, like the first point that he made about it returning was like how huge sport and competition and just being around like-minded people that like the game or the sport as much as you do, and what that does for your mental. And he hit the nail on the head. Coming back gives these student athletes almost like a release, you know, like they're not pent up anymore. They get to do the things that they like to do. And again, like I said, I think I didn't know much about him going into this. I think I learned enough to know from that one conversation that he has the AUS. The AUS is in good hands with Phil Currie. I think he has said all the right things and he meant them. I didn't feel like they were forced or anything like that. I felt like he genuinely cares about the student athletes. He cares about the product, and he cares about how it's presented in growing the game and growing the sport for student athletes in the Atlantic provinces.
I also think it's cool how I use the word team. You know, like the AUS is it's a group of people. It's a team. There's a lot of people. They're doing the work to get these events set up, to get the leagues back in action, to interact with the coaches, the athletes and all that kind of stuff. The students, I should be saying. And like, that's what's awesome is like, he made it sound like it wasn't just him. You know, it's not like he's running the entire operation. He's overseeing it and helping everything get set up, but he gave a lot of credit to his team. And when we asked about the AUS championships, because obviously from a viewer standpoint, the soccer tournaments, the volleyball tournaments, the football finals, the basketball at the Metro Center is always super exciting. Like, that doesn't get done overnight. Like, that's a huge deal that has to be like taking lots of time to work towards. And I think it's cool he gave so much credit to his team.
Definitely great guy. Just before, do you want to talk about McGregor MGK before we get out of here? I think the NFL underdogs might be a little bit too long of a topic. There was too many underdogs that fucking disappointed me on Sunday, Monday. So I'd rather just kind of be happy and not talk about them, and just a quick topic to get out of here. A nice little fun one. But what did you make of this situation, man? Like, at first I had some thoughts about McGregor, and then I kind of had some other thoughts, and now I'm kind of just like caught in the middle about the whole situation.
Man, I could just hear your voice saying like, this guy is just like different now. Like, he's literally just like, he's just up to no good always, like, you know. And it's just like, whenever I see it, I feel like it's just like a joke. But then I watch the extended video and I read reports, and that's how you know, honestly, that's how you know somebody's not who they were before, personally and like as an athlete. He hasn't won anything in like 4 years, and he's injured now. He needs to stay relevant. Like, there's trash talk going on from Dustin Poirier and even Jake Paul when he was trying to get him to fight him, saying that McGregor is trying really hard to stay relevant. And I was like, that's bullshit. Like, this guy's loaded. He's got his own whiskey. He's still a talented fighter. He just has to fight the biggest names now. But when you do shit like that, it's like, bro, you could knock anybody out. I don't care how short you are. Like, why are you beefing with MGK? Like, that guy's skinnier than I was at my skinniest peak. You know what I mean? Like, this guy literally, I just don't understand. You know what I mean? And then he starts talking about Megan Fox. Like, he just can't keep himself out of the news for like longer than a couple days.
What I was reading was kind of weird. Like, I guess like McGregor asked for a picture with Megan Fox, and then MGK was just like, no. So like, that's where the whole thing came about. And like, at first I was like, man, this guy's a fucking idiot. Like, what is he doing? Like, like you said, all he's doing is trying to keep his name out there and just stay relevant during the injury, so that when he comes back, he can show Uncle Dana, hey, I still got all my fans. My name's still buzzing. I'm still trending. Like, give me a big fight and I want to be paid. But then I kind of started to think, like, who is MGK to just be like, no, you're not? Like, didn't even let Megan Fox say no. He was just like, no. And like, I think sometimes people forget that like fighters are like fight or flight human beings, right? Like, those people, like, and I would say 10 times out of 10, they're going to fight. Most fighters aren't running. When you're just like openly disrespect one of like the most dangerous dudes on the planet, regardless of where he's at in his career right now and what's going on, we're talking about like on the street, like one of the most dangerous dudes in the world. maybe you should treat him with a little bit more respect than, no, in front of a bunch of cameras. Maybe his wife's there. Maybe she really wanted a picture, but he was like, you know what, I'm going to go over there and say, like, I want a picture. Like, we don't really know the whole situation. And I just think that sometimes, like, we get caught up in thinking like rappers and entertainers could like ever really do something to a fighter. And I think that was one instance where like it might have been nice for the public to see like what would have happened if like an actual fighter grabbed a hold of an entertainer. Because like entertainers shouldn't not be, like messing with fighters. Like I get Jake Paul's an entertainer and he's fighting now, but he's training. Like you can't just like openly disrespect these guys. Like these guys are tapped individuals. They go in there and they fight in a cage for a living.
Yeah.
And they're pretty much the whole reason they're doing it, in my opinion, is for their respect. They want respect, and like they're going to earn it by fighting.
I saw a funny clip of Dustin Poirier, and somebody was asking him like, "What would it take for you to like fight somebody not in the not in a cage, like not in a professional environment?" And he's like, "Oh man, they'd have to really do something." You know what I mean? Like he's like, this is what we get trained all of our life to do professionally, and like we're taught not to use these skills like in a negative, because any of these people in a street fight, I'm sure you've seen fights like downtown Halifax before, where it's like that guy has MMA experience and that guy doesn't. Like I remember one time I was outside Pizza Corner and I was like, that guy's gonna get his ass kicked, and then the guy that I thought was gonna lose put somebody else in like a leg like triangle headlock. I was like, well, this guy has experience, and the other guy had no idea he had experience.
Yeah,
and like
no idea what he was doing.
And like that's the thing. Like people that know what they're doing, they literally don't want to get into fights because they just know like it's going to be no contest. And so that's why I just don't understand why McGregor's acting hard. It's like
we also gotta. I think we also are. We're a family friendly podcast, obviously, but the extracurriculars, we'll say, probably have something to do with Connor's constant mood swings and why he's, acting out sometimes, and he's not, maybe thinking clearly all the time. Yeah. I think I saw a picture recently of some extracurriculars on a table in a picture of his where like I don't even think he realized that they were like it was there. Like I just think that guy's just kind of lost his way since losing, and he's just kind of on this downward spiral, and he's just going to kind of like take anybody with him that wants to go down there with him.
Yeah.
And I feel kind of bad for the guy, but I also don't really have sympathy for a guy that's like, punched an old man at a bar, thrown a barricade through a bus window that injured innocent people that had nothing to do with the feud with Khabib. And then now, you're at a public event, one of the biggest in the world, and you're out there trying to fight some twig that, wouldn't let you take a picture with his girlfriend. And, if he's that insecure that he wouldn't let you take a picture with his girlfriend, like that's kind of more on him than you. So like, I just feel like he's kind of in this downward spiral. And like, that was just one of those moments where like he felt disrespected and he knew there was a lot of cameras around, and he was just like, you're not going to disrespect me like that. Like if I want to break your jaw, I'll break your jaw.
Yeah. And I mean, look, the other part of it is like, he could, but then like my main thing I'm going to say is just like, everybody already knows. So like, why are you acting tough? Like if somebody was messing with me and in my head, I knew there was 100% no doubt in my mind that I could mess them up, I almost wouldn't want to do anything because I'd be like, in my head, I already just knew I could. Yeah. McGregor likes that spotlight. You mentioned he gets going with some other activities. We don't know the context of it completely, but I thought we mentioned it because it's just hilarious. Like, who would have thought these two guys, their names would be next to each other?
Get them in a ring.
Yeah, exactly. Get them in a ring.
You're the fucking superstar promoter now, bro. I know you're not listening to this, but if somehow in the wacky universe you stumble across a fight that you want to make, it should be Conor McGregor and MGK. That shit would be hilarious.
Make sure you guys all check out Sports Interaction, sportsinteraction.com/Mayflower Sports. Gamble responsibly, of course. Only gamble what you can afford to lose. We hope you win, though. But bet with your head, not your heart. We appreciate Phil Currie, Executive Director of the AUS, joining us on the podcast. You can check us out on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts as well. Looking forward to these podcasts. Every single Friday, you can find us live. We're going to have guests on. And make sure you guys follow us on Instagram and Twitter and let us know what you want us to talk about. And we'll try and answer your questions.